Hello, this is Eric Holloway with the National Weather Service for January 10th, 2023. A couple options for you. 1-800 number gets you through a phone menu system. We're also out on the World Wide Web at weather.gov/Alaska. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at the email listed. For the watch warnings and advisories out for Alaska, looks like we have some winter weather advisories out along the coastal areas for snow and blowing snow with cold temperatures associated with that, but down through the YK Delta. The winter weather advisory is now in effect until 8 p.m. this evening. Also, on the tip of the Seward Peninsula, winter weather advisory remains in effect from 6 p.m. this evening till 6 a.m. on Wednesday. That reddish area up there was blizzard warning for that area in effect until 9 a.m. on Thursday. And lastly, the rest of the Arctic coast looking at a winter weather advisory remains in effect from 7 p.m. this evening till 6 a.m. on Thursday. So confidence is a little bit lower for blizzard conditions out there, but please be cognizant of that if you head outside. Looking at the satellite image, you can see some cloudiness associated with a weakening low near the Bristol Bay region, spreading some snow showers through much of the western mainland. And you can also see the next system showing up just south of Shimia. Strong low will be approaching that area over the next couple days. What does this look like on the surface map? 986 millibar low with some troughs associated with that low spreading out across the west coast. They're bringing some snow showers, as we talked about in the satellite image, but otherwise mixed precipitation to the central Aleutians and portions of the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, some lingering snow showers in the Panhandle and some fog along the Arctic coast. Also, for tonight's weather, that low moves a little bit farther north, 995 millibar low with a trough associated with that, continuing lingering snow showers through much of the western mainland down in the south central and portions of the Panhandle with some mixed precipitation at lower elevations at the coastal areas. And there's that low that shows up just south of the western Aleutians, 980 millibar low there with strong snow showers there and some mixed precipitation associated with that system. Otherwise, high pressure in extreme eastern Russia and northern Canada. For Wednesday's weather, looking at that low continue to move north, now just south of the Seward Peninsula with a 990 millibar low there with the trough and lingering snow showers through much of the western mainland down to the southwest. And then we also have a low just south of the Gulf of Alaska moving north towards the Panhandle, bringing some light snow showers there. Otherwise, mixed precipitation through much of the coastal areas of the Gulf Coast. And there's that low just south of the western Aleutian, 960 millibar low, though, with an occluded front and choke point snow showers across much of the Bering Sea. For Thursday's weather, that low now over Seward Peninsula, 1,007 millibars, weakening there. Some lingering snow showers across the north slope and into the interior. Otherwise, that big low out there in the western Aleutians, 958 millibar low there with occluded front spreading out through the Bering Sea. Mixed precipitation associated with that system south of the front. Otherwise, some lingering mixed precipitation across Alaska Peninsula into Kodiak Island and some lingering snow showers and coastal rain showers in the Panhandle with that weakening occluded front. So as we look at low temperatures for Wednesday morning, 32 in Ketchikan, 36 in Sitka, 26 in Juneau, 27 in Yakutat, Valdez 22, 16 in Talkeetna, 15 in Anchorage, 29 in Homer, 26 in Kodiak, 28 in King Salmon, -6 in McGrath. For high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, 42 in Ketchikan, looking at 43 in Sitka, 34 in Juneau, 32 in Haines, 36 in Yakutat, 32 in Valdez, 24 in Anchorage, 25 in Talkeetna, 35 in Homer, 32 in Kodiak, 31 in King Salmon, 6 in McGrath. For low temperatures Thursday morning, 33 in Ketchikan, 37 in Sitka, 25 in Juneau, 19 in Haines, 26 in Yakutat, 23 in Valdez, 15 in Anchorage, 26 in Homer, 14 in Talkeetna, 30 in Kodiak, 17 in King Salmon, -6 in McGrath. High temperatures Thursday afternoon, 43 in Ketchikan, 44 in Sitka, 35 in Juneau, 30 in Haines, 37 in Yakutat, 34 in Valdez, 27 in Anchorage, 27 in McGrath, 36 in Homer, 40 in Kodiak, 26 in King Salmon, 5 up there in McGrath. For low temperatures Wednesday morning for the interior and North Slope, looking at -16 in Northway, -4 in Fairbanks, -10 in Fort Yukon, -11 in Eagle, -13 in Activity Pass, -13 also up there in Ukqiavik, -1 in Point Hope, 6 in Nome, -3 in Galena, -6 in Tanana. High temperatures Wednesday afternoon, looking at -4 for Northway, 5 in Fairbanks, actually pretty mild. 1 for Eagle, 0 in Fort Yukon, Activity Pass 0, -3 in Ukqiavik, Point Hope 10, Nome 19, 8 in Galena, 3 in Tanana. For low temperatures Thursday morning, looking at -14 in Northway, -6 in Fairbanks, -6 in Fort Yukon, -7 in Eagle, -9 in Activity Pass, -6 in Ukqiavik, Point Hope 4, 3 in Nome, 0 in Galena, -8 in Tanana. For high temperatures Thursday afternoon, looking at -13 in Northway, 1 in Fairbanks, -6 in Fort Yukon, 1 in Eagle, 2 in Activity Pass, 0 in Ukqiavik, 9 in Point Hope, 11 in Nome, 5 in Galena, 1 in Tanana. For low temperatures Wednesday morning, down to the southwest Alaska Peninsula, 11 in Bethel, 11 in Aniak as well, 25 in Dillingham, Cold Bay 22, Dutch Harbor 30, Shemya 29, 20 in St. Paul. For low temperatures, or high temperatures Wednesday afternoon, looking at Bethel 18, 22 in Aniak, 29 in Dillingham, 30 in Cold Bay, 35 in Dutch Harbor, 38 in Shemya, 27 in St. Paul. Low temperatures Thursday morning, looking at 1 at Bethel, 3 in Aniak, 17 in Dillingham, 20 in Cold Bay, 30 in Dutch Harbor, 35 in Shemya, 22 in St. Paul. High temperatures Thursday afternoon, 10 in Bethel, 14 in Aniak, 23 in Dillingham, 33 in Cold Bay, Dutch Harbor 39, 39 in Shemya, and 35 in St. Paul. Taking a look at the CPC temperature outlook for January 16th through January 20th, looking at below normal tilts across much of the North Slope down through the Waikiki Delta, Seward Peninsula, and above normal tilts for temperatures in the 6 to 10 day across much of the southern mainland and the Panhandle. Near normal conditions favored across much of the interior. And then for CPC's 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for January 16th through January 20th, looking at near normal conditions through much of the North Slope and across portions of the interior down through the southwest, Seward Peninsula included in that. And lastly, looking at above normal tilts across much of the southern portions of the mainland and into south central, with Alaska Peninsula also tilting toward above normal tilts for precipitation, and also across the Panhandle and into the northeast Gulf Coast for the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook or precipitation outlook. Also some warmth associated with that system through the 6 to 10 day period.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the aviation weather starting Wednesday morning, we're looking at IFR conditions with an associated low moving into the western Aleutians, again for Wednesday morning. Otherwise, some IFR conditions Associated with a weak trough over the Bering Sea, the IFR condition spreads out through the northern Bering down to the southwest and portions of the Alaska Range, and then over into the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise, marginal conditions up through the Arctic coast and down through the rest of the Bering Sea. For Wednesday afternoon, looking at IFR conditions covering much of the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound. Otherwise, some IFR conditions, again, associated with next low moving into the western and central Aleutians with an included front there. Otherwise, some marginal conditions through much of the western mainland up through the Arctic coast and portions of the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise, some decent flying weather conditions for the Panhandle, especially the southern Panhandle, again, for Wednesday afternoon. For Thursday morning, looking at IFR conditions moving through the northwest coast there and spread down through the western interior, and also some IFR conditions over in the southern Bering Sea, again associated with that next low and fluid front. And otherwise, some marginal conditions through much of the northern Gulf. Otherwise, some good flying conditions continues in the Panhandle. For Thursday afternoon, IFR conditions spreading further north there in the northwest. Otherwise, some marginal conditions scattered throughout much of the southwest and into the Bering Sea, and also some marginal conditions in the Gulf of Alaska, along with IFR conditions in the Gulf and out there in the central Bering. Past conditions for Wednesday, AKwx VFR conditions, same for Adigan VFR conditions there. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR conditions. You might see some downsloping on the other side of the Alaska Range on the west side, but otherwise generally expecting IFR conditions for those two passes. Rainy went for IFR conditions early, then marginal late in the day. For Wednesday, windy, marginal. Isabel, VFR, could see some marginal conditions later in the day. Mentasta, VFR up that way. Tanita, marginal conditions, but I did go for VFR conditions on the eastern entrance, and for Portage, marginal conditions decreasing to IFR conditions with that weak low moving north in the Gulf. Otherwise, some VFR conditions can be expected as you break into with the inlet. For Chilkoot and White, VFR conditions decreasing to marginal conditions down. For freezing levels, Wednesday morning, surface freezing level cutting across the central and southern Bering Sea, across the southern mainland into the northern portions of the Panhandle. Otherwise, elevated freezing levels in the Gulf of Alaska at 2,000 to 4,000 feet there. For icing conditions on Wednesday, about 7,000 feet for isolated moderate up in the northwest and down to the southwest expected there. Otherwise, 6,000 to 10,000 feet in the southern mainland into Panhandle with considerable moderate possible as you get into the Panhandle. Otherwise, 4,000 to 8,000 feet spreading across the western and central Aleutians. For the jet stream on Wednesday, with a couple lows analyzed. Up at the jet stream level, 75 knots cutting across much of the southern mainland, and then actually light and variable across much of the Panhandle and across the central and northern mainland. For 9,000 foot winds, looking at a couple low pressure systems again. Otherwise, looking at southwestern flow across the southwest, 25 to 30 knots there. Otherwise, light and variable across the mainland. Possible some southerly winds across the southern Panhandle. And for 3,000 foot winds on Wednesday, that low out there in the Aleutians, southerly flow in a counterclockwise fashion, 65 knots there, with strong southerly flow. Otherwise, light and variable across the mainland. Look for some easterlies across the southern Brooks Range, 35 to 45 knots there. Otherwise, some light variable conditions across the Panhandle. Lastly, for the turbulence on Wednesday, surface to 4,000 feet across the Brooks Range and into this interior. Otherwise, surface 3,000 feet out there in the central and western Aleutians, and some isolated to considerable moderate in portions of the Gulf and southern Panhandle.
Since time immemorial, that's when the polar ice used to reach us. Gulushik, the mother ice. The Gulushik was the one that set the winter. and it brought with it abundance of whales, seals, marine mammals.
I started going out in the ocean with my dad about 6 or 7 years old. We couldn't wait to go out to be with the elder men and face the ocean.
My dad taught me how to hunt and fish when I was a very young boy. He took me away out in the ocean and he taught me how to ogre hunt. I got scared. I looked up at my dad and he wasn't scared. So I haven't been scared ever since.
We would go out roughly 30 miles out from here, and you can hear walrus from a long way. They have very poor eyesight. You know, they could smell you, so you always went, downwind. In the old days, there'd be hundreds on a piece of ice, I always tried to find one or two that were by themselves. They could be a pretty dangerous animal.
And I felt privileged to be out there with my dad and his brothers to be able to provide for our family and our people. But little did we know this change that was coming.
My life cycle basically begins in January. So in January, we have muskox. We also have moose. Then that time of year, the crabbing in the ocean starts.
I have fish eggs, muskox, walrus.
April and May, I'm bear hunting. End of May, the ducks come. Beginning of June, the trout start running in the river, and we'll cut 100 trout to put in sea oil. End of June, the salmon show up.
Cranberries, blueberries.
In August, we'll do 100 to 200 silvers in the smokehouse.
Salmon berries, my rhubarb.
For 9 whole months, 9 whole solid months, the whole of the Bering Sea would be completely locked up. Now we're down to 3.
The ice is coming later and leaving earlier. We probably won't have freeze up maybe till January, but it's still too unsafe to go out on the ice.
The biggest thing I've seen out of this climate change is we have an east wind. East wind is always a warm wind, 30 above, 20 above. East wind brings warm weather. We need that 20, 30 below to create the foundation for us to operate on the platform.
In the Bering Sea region, sea ice is an extension of the land. It provides a platform for whaling, for travel. It enables them to hunt and to access food in the ocean that it would be much more difficult to access otherwise.
And this is the tomcod fishing that happens. But as you can see, there's plenty. A beluga, ogre hunting, one of our elders butchering a caribou.
We've lost over 70% of the entire volume of Arctic sea ice.
Ice used to be like 8 to 10 feet thick. Nowadays, it's like 1.5 feet, 2 feet thick.
Chop a hole in the ice and, throw some salmon eggs in there and we pull out trout and whitefish and grayling. But if it's melting a lot earlier, then that opportunity goes away.
We can't venture out on the ice even if it comes up to our island. It's not solid, so we can't risk going out on the ice.
Many communities use shortfast ice for whaling, but they also rely on the pack ice.
Even in mid-March, I'm looking for ice as far out in the ocean as I can go, and that's not normal.
At the Arctic scale, we've lost over 40% of ice extent in the summer.
2,000-pound animal, to try to pull them up on the ice with the 4 guys, it's so much easier to go after them while they're on the ice. It's getting more dangerous to go get them.
Walrus has been our most powerful ally for survival. The tusks were used for tools, hunting, harpoon heads, spear heads, arrowheads, and the skin was used for food. The female walrus skin was used for skin boats.
1/2 ton of meat, blubber, and food, and that'll feed a whole village, man.
Our food resource has always been within close proximity to our villages, so that we didn't have to spend a lot of money to go fill our freezers.
What's going to be on the breakfast table tomorrow? In a week's time, will we have enough food to feed our family, to feed our community, to feed our children, our elders?
The other thing that the ice provides is a platform for sea ice algae.
When it forms in the winter, it's like a playground, and a living playground for a lot of the plankton and the zooplankton.
The krill eat the algae, the fish eat the krill, the seals eat the krill, the mers eat the fish.
Without the ice, we're losing all that, and we're starting to see a lot of shorebirds and even some sea mammals start. Just this summer, I counted 20 young baby ugrux from the spring that had started it. Our garden is dying.
One thing about the native population is they adapt very well. You know, if the salmon go away, they replace that with something else. And if the ducks aren't coming, they'll find something else. Instead of waiting till May to go hunting, I'm hunting in April and March. I think we're facing a different kind of change that we haven't really seen before. I think, you know, if the crabs go or if the blue whales go and we don't see them, if the seals don't come back here, how do we adapt? I don't know that we can.
My ancestors say that we've been on that island for over 10,000 years. What is very powerfully painful to me is that as we're losing our age-old way of life, literally melting away, our identity is being lost. But we're still here. We're still who we are.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the marine forecast, starting with the ice edge. Ice forecaster analyzed some ice moving further south, just north of St. Matthew Island currently. Otherwise, some lower concentrations out ahead of the higher concentrations of ice down through the central Bering Sea, down through the Bering Strait. Also some ice analyzed in Bristol Bay and in the Cook Inlet. Looking at the marine forecast for southeast Alaska, inside waters, winds generally from a northerly direction up to 20 with gusts to 35 there in the central inside waters. Outside waters, looking at winds generally from the east at 20 to 30 with seas as high as 15 feet. Look for small craft advisories there on Wednesday. For Thursday's marine forecast, inside waters, generally variable direction, 20 to 25, seas as high as 9 feet on the southern end of that. On the outside waters, winds generally from the east went up to 25 with seas as high as 17 feet. Look for small craft advisories there on Thursday. For Wednesday's marine forecast, for the Gulf region, winds generally from a southerly direction up to 15 with seas as high as 8 feet. Prince William Sound, winds from the south east at 20 with seas as high as 3 feet. For the Cook Inlet, winds generally from a northeasterly direction 10 to 15 with seas as high as 3 feet. And for Thursday, for the Gulf region, winds generally from a northeasterly direction 15 to 20 with seas as high as 9 feet. For Prince William Sound, winds generally from the north at 15 with seas as high as 2 feet. And for the Cook Inlet region, winds generally from a variable direction 10 to 20 with seas as high as 5 feet. For Wednesday's marine forecast for Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, looking at winds variable direction around Kodiak Island 10 to 15 with seas as high as 8 feet. Southside Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from a northwesterly direction at 15 with seas as high as 8 feet. And for the north side Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from the west at 10 to 15 with seas as high as 4 feet. And for Thursday, Winds around Kodiak Island generally from the easterly direction, 15 to 20 with seas as high as 8 feet. Southside Alaska Peninsula winds generally from the east at 25 with seas as high as 10 feet. And for the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from a easterly direction, 15 to 20 with seas as high as 4 feet. For the Aleutian chain, Wednesday, looking at winds generally from a variable direction, but most notably over there in the western Aleutians, winds generally from a easterly direction up to 50, with seas as high as 22 feet. Look for storm force winds there on Wednesday. And for Thursday, winds calm down over the western Aleutians, but winds generally from in the easterly direction across the region, with winds up to 45 with seas as high as 24 feet south of Adak and Atka. For Wednesday's marine forecast for the west coast, winds generally from a northerly direction except for the North and Sound region, up 30 with seas as high as 7 feet just south of the ice edge there, and around 5 feet there in the Pribilofs. For Thursday's marine forecast, winds generally from an easterly direction, 15 to 30. They're just south of the ice edge with seas as high as 11 feet near the Pribilofs. For Wednesday's marine forecast for the Arctic coast, looking at winds generally from an easterly direction along the Beaufort Sea coast, up to 40 there, down through the Chukchi Sea coast, winds from the east at 40, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the north at 25 to 30. And for Thursday, along the Beaufort Sea coast, winds 30 to 35, and down through the Chukchi Sea coast, winds generally from the east at 30 to 35 as well, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the east at 15 to 20. For the service map, looking at a weakening low there over the YK Delta with 995 millibar low there, with a trough associated with that system north and south, spreading snow showers across much of the southwest and western mainland over into the south central region. Otherwise, some lingering snow showers over there in the Panhandle, and there's that low 980 millibar low with northward trajectory with snow showers and mixed precipitation associated with that system. And for Wednesday, whether that low over the western mainland moves further north, 999 millibar low with a trough associated with that system, lingering snow showers across much of the west, and that low just south of the western Aleutians, 968 millibar low.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.